We're brothers. Right, we say it a lot around here. Of course, what's up, bro? And when I'm out in the world, I call everyone brother still. I like it. And I see people that way now. But, you say brother Kurt and brother whatever. And being in the body of Christ, we're all brothers in that way, right? Spiritual brothers and sisters. But, what it means to be a brother, right? Give me that first scripture, somebody.
John 15, 13 through 14.
And then someone look up each of these scriptures so that when I need it, you can say it.
Greater love has no one than the same one lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends if you do what I command.
Say that again louder.
Greater love has no one than this, that someone laid down his life for his friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you.
Yeah, that's right. So to be a friend of Christ, we must do what he commands.
Amen.
Right? And then to be a friend to one another, it's about, and I'm just putting brother basically in the place of friend here, is that you have to be willing to lay down your life. Right?
Yes. Real little thing.
So some brother relationships in the Bible. Anyone mention a couple brothers?
Cain and Abel.
Yeah, what else?
Jacob and Esau.
David and Jonathan.
Jesus and James.
Well, they weren't actually brothers.
But-
They were.
Not you.
I'm sure they were.
Jonathan was Saul's.
They weren't blood, but they were brothers.
They were in covenant with each
They
other.
loved each other.
Oh, sure. Amen.
Not like that.
Go to Genesis 4.
For Cain and Abel.
No, yet. Alright, so the first brothers. Alright. So the first brother, it's important to take a look at the first fraternal relationship, right? We're going to talk about brothers.
Amen.
Alright, so what happened with Cain and Abel?
Cain said to his brother Abel, let's go out to the field, so they went out.
What happened before that?
Before that, Adam and Eve made love, she became pregnant.
Yeah, she did. Alright, how about how about verse 4? And Abel, on his part, also brought the firstlings, right? So in verse 3, you see, so it came about in the course of time that Cain brought an offering to the Lord of the fruit of the ground. And Abel, of his part, also brought of the firstlings of his flock. Right, so what's the difference there?
One's livestock and one's produce.
The best, right? It's not like in a sacrificial terms, a grain offering is also important to the Father, right? But what it says here is that Abel brought the firstlings and that Cain brought an offering, right? And then we see the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and for his offering, he had no regard. Right? So it wasn't only that God was upset or didn't want this offering, but that he's upset with Cain too for trying to give the scraps.
Yeah.
So it's not just about what we give, but it's us as the giver. It has to be in a right relationship and right standing, right? If you do well, will not your countenance be lifted up? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door, and its desire is for you, but you must master it. Right? That's pretty powerful. This is the first time that the Word of God mentions sin. And its description is very apt. It's just waiting. It wants you to give in. Right? Cain rose up against Abel, his brother, and killed him. right? Yeah. Am I my brother's keeper? He says. Curtis likes to say that a lot. Have you ever heard Curtis say that?
Once or twice.
Or 100 times. Yeah. I like this. The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground. Right? And Hebrews 11 says, and Abel, though dead, still speaks. Right? So what the point is there is that the Father was with him even in his ending, right? But that Cain, was cast out, had the mark put on, and was cast out. It says to the land of Nod, and Nod is just like a term for like nomadic. So it just means it's not an actual place, or it's just that he's out, right? We have, I'm staying pretty close to the beginning of Genesis here. There's lots of brother relationships that we could look into, and we have Shem, Ham, and Japheth, right? That we're among the righteous. And really the message there is just that God won't forsake the righteous. Never have I seen the righteous forsaken, and that they repopulated the earth, right? So all of us come from one of their lines. Something we're going to talk a little bit about today is the book of Jasher. It's mentioned in the Bible in Samuel and then in Joshua also. Is it not written in the book of Jasher? It says. And so we're going to look at a couple scriptures that leave questions open in the Bible, and we're going to see how supplementary material, in this case it's going to be the book of Jasher, fills in some of these blanks, right? As it pertains to these brother relationships. Give me that Genesis 11:28.
Haran died in Ur of the Chaldeans, the land of his birth, while his father Terah was still living.
Read the next verse. 11:28, is that where you are?
Yeah. Genesis 11:28. Yeah.
Wait. Read it again, Tony. Maybe I just missed the first part.
But Haran died.
Okay, yeah. I didn't hear you say that.
Ur.
Yep, Haran died in the presence of his father Terah. So this is Abram's brother, and it doesn't say why. That's the only verse about it. In these one verse scriptures, when it talks about somebody, it only mentions one verse. There's usually more, but it's not always just right here. Right? So what happened, and this is chapter 12 in the book of Jasher, is that Terah was a maker, an idol, a workshop maker. Right? So he had all these handmade idols that he was praying to and worshiping. This is Abram's father. Right? And that Abram, a young man at this time, he took an axe to all these idols and he put the axe in the hand of the biggest one. And then his father Terah came home and said, how could you do this or whatever? And he said, look, the biggest idol has that axe in his hand. It was obviously him that destroyed all these other ones. And Terah says, well, it's just an idol. It can't do that. And he says, exactly. Why would you worship something when the one true God that lives is worthy of your worship? Why would you worship a handmade, man-made wooden idol? But anyway, so the king at this time hears about this and takes Abram and his brother from Terah. It's a fiery furnace situation, as the Bible likes, and throws these two in the fire. And Abram isn't harmed, but his brother dies. The king said to Abram, how is it that thou wast not burned in the fire? And Abram said to the king, the God of heaven and earth, in whom I trust, and who has all in his power. He delivered me from the fire into which thou dost cast me. Amen. So that's how Haran died in the presence of his father. What about Jacob and Esau? What do we know about Jacob and Esau? How about their birth, right? When Jacob was grabbing at the heel of Esau. Amen. Give me Genesis 25:23.
The Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 people from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger.
Yeah, and we've seen that come to fulfillment, right? And this is just an example of that. Brothers will have conflict, right? This is not unusual, and it's not shocking news that brothers will be in some conflict. Give me the 25-27 one.
The boys grew up, and Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country, while Jacob was content to stay at home and own the tents.
And this is interesting too, how it talks about Esau being a mighty hunter. There's a genealogy that mentions Nimrod also and says that he was a mighty hunter in the land. And what the book of Jasher says about that is that the skins that God made for Adam was handed down and was taken on the ark. And the Cush, who was the son of Ham, ended up with these skins, and that Nimrod got it after that. And that's how, that if you put these skins on, that there's great power that came with it. So that's what Jasher says about that. Chapter 27, the birthright. Right, and it's interesting that the birthrights among the Hebrews, it's just that the son, usually the eldest, receives the most allotment of land and money and etc., right? But now among the patriarchs, it's been different. It's been very different. We had Ishmael was born before Isaac, yet Isaac received the birthright. And then we had Esau should have received the birthright. He sold it, for a bowl of lentils. But then also, and so Jacob was a little shady there, and then Jacob also was shady putting on the furs and receiving that final blessing from Isaac before he went off. So Jacob, we see, is a bit of a deceiver. That his name means that also. And then even further, Reuben was the eldest of the 12 sons of Jacob, but then Joseph received the birthright. And then even further, Manasseh was the eldest of Joseph, but Ephraim received the birthright. And so this is a reoccurring thing. And also with the birthrights come like the burial plots, which is, have you guys heard of the Cave of Machpelah? Anybody, the Cave of Machpelah?
Isn't that the one that was purchased because it was supposed to be where Adam and Eve's remains were buried?
What the legend is there is that Abram was chasing a deer or something that he had wounded, and he found the bodies of Adam and Eve in this cave, right? And that they hadn't decayed or anything, and that their bodies were putting off a goodly odor, it says. And so he wanted this plot. And where he talks about him buying the plot, this is in the Bible. It does say the Cave of Machpelah. And it is where the patriarchs are buried. It's Abram and Sarah, and then Isaac and Rebekah, and then Jacob and Leah are all buried there. There's other legends. The Quran, I think, says that Moses is buried there, or if it doesn't say it there, it's an Islamic tradition that he's buried there. And it is an actual site, and I'm fairly certain that it's in an Islamic territory right now, so it's kind of under their supervision right now. But it's called the Cave of the Patriarchs. Machpelah, though, is the actual name of the cave. Interesting thing about that is that Esau where when Esau died, Dan of the 12 sons of Jacob struck him in the head, and it's how Esau died. And this is also the book of Jasher, right? So all the sons of Esau are trying to take Esau and bury him in the cave of Machpelah, and then all the sons of Jacob meet him there. And when you say the sons of Jacob, it's also all their people that they've acquired, all their livestock. It's a huge organization, basically. And Esau would have had the same thing. And there was a huge battle there over burial rights for Esau. Have you heard of the Edomites? The Edomites. Well, they come from Esau's line. It's the same root word. It means red, Edom. And the Edomites were enemies of the Hebrews. And this all started with this battle over the burial rights of Esau. So give me that Numbers scripture, somebody. Numbers 20:21. Read it.
People of Israel, the whole congregation, came to the wilderness of Zin in the first month, and the people stayed in Kadesh and Europe, where the Lord turned it.
Was that 2021?
Because Edom refused to allow Israel to pass through their country. Israel.
Either way, I'm sure it's close. It's fine. It's fine. Yeah, no, that's good. So they're traveling, and all we have here is Edom refused to let them travel this way. They refused to let them even walk on their territory, and we don't have an answer for that. The book of Jasher describes an answer. So this is one book in a one-word topic that shows how not all, but some of this extra biblical stuff is important. Shows how it supplements the Word of God, right? Just to give us an overall perspective. In Obadiah, the book of Obadiah is about the destruction of the Edomites. So when we're talking about brothers, there's got to be a love, right? A love that doesn't come just because Blaine is such a cool guy. I love him. Though he's all right, I guess. It's that I love the Father, right? And the love of the Father is in me, and it's easy to love Blaine, even when don't get me started. You guys are not all easy to love, but when the love of the Father is in you, it becomes easier, right? And it's not always something that just happens overnight, but I consider you all brothers, and it's that it's a love thing, right? And it's just from the Father. It's not from my own. It's not that I'm a great guy or anything. It's that God's given me a love that enables me to love others, right? So there's several words for love, the Greek words for love, and it's all different variants. Eros is like the sexual kind of love. You need somebody, Kirk?
Yeah, I need Blaine and Michael.
And so then the love of God, the godly love for us is agape, right? And then the brotherly love that we're talking about today is phileo, like the root from Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, right? So that's the brotherly love. The Hebrew words is that hesed is also the word for mercy. It's loving kindness. It's the sexual love in Hebrew is yada, Y-A-D-A. That's like where it says like Adam knew Eve. That's the word there. That's what the brother love is. Well, it's phileo. It's Phileo. And we can look it up and see what it looks like in Greek, but that's the way I would spell it. Give me that 1 Corinthians 13:1.
If I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal.
Yeah. Without love, it's nothing. Right? You can call someone a brother all day without love. It doesn't mean a thing. Right, what's this next one? John 13, 34 and 35. This one's incredible. And then one other person look up that 1 John 3:18.
A new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this all men will know that you are my disciples if you love one another.
Okay, stay right there. So that's incredible, right? If you're not loving, you're not a disciple of the Lord. If you're not loving, if it's not in your fruit, you should check yourself spiritually, right? Because you're not doing something right. You're not connected to the man. Obedience is what he's saying here, right? Those that do it a command are the ones that love him. Others, give me that 1 John 3:18. Dear children, don't just talk about love. Put your love into action. Then it will truly be love. What version is that? Nice. Well done. Don't just talk about love, be about love, right? Amen. So, what the deal is here is we're all living in close proximity to each other. It's not always easy, but just be tolerant of your brothers, right? Love each other. You know, get each other's backs. You're in this together, whether you like it or not. You know? So, what the scripture here says, read just 34.
A new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you, so you must love one another.
So the word says, and he also says, you know, love your neighbor as yourselves. Being obedient is more than talk, right? And obedience to God is an expression of your faith, or evidence that you've got a real lack of faith. You know, your walk shows if you're obedient, and then your love proceeds from your obedience. So it's a command to love, right? And though grace abounds, it wasn't grace that saved Noah. It was obedience, right? Be obedient in that you love each other.
Like it says in 360, we know what love is because Jesus Christ gave his life for us. So we should give our lives for our brothers.
Yeah, read that again louder.
We know what love is because Jesus Christ gave his life for us. So we should give our lives for our brothers and sisters.
And so even though we know what Christ has for us, just like he told Joshua that land is there for him, and it is there for him, he had to go in and possess it. Right? So just that we know what can come from our obedience and the way that we should be, it's about action also. You know? So just love each other as Christ loved you. Amen.
Amen.
That's it. You guys are good. Pastor Ray, you need somebody?